We got Lisa DePasquale. She is the CPAC director of the American Conservative Union. These Republicans are not really that conservative anymore. They're not really helping anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and, you know, if we end up losing the House and the Senate, I don't think it's necessarily because people believe that Democrats have the solutions. I think they just believe that Republicans don't or aren't willing to do anything.
But, Lisa, I want to ask you, at the American Conservative Union, I don't think you guys think that George Bush has the solutions anymore.
Well, you know, we still support him because he's our president, but yeah, we have been critical of a lot of things that he's done, particularly, you know, on taxes and
the budget, and Iraq.
What do you guys? What are your thoughts on Iraq? What are your thoughts on the detainee bill that was just passed?
I don't know much about the detainee bill, but as far as Iraq goes, I think that we should at least have the same resolve that our enemies have. And as long as we have, as long as the military is willing to fight the battle, then I think that they should be there.
Not.
Yeah, but the military is not.
I think that we need to come at it with more force. I mean,
Lisa, you understand that you know that there's a reason why people quote John Murtha all the time because.
Who quotes John Murtha?
No, everybody quotes John Murtha. The reason is because he talks to the military, he talks to the generals. One of the times that John Murtha spoke, it was a half an hour after he spoke to General Abizaid. The generals are speaking through John Murtha. They're saying enough.
He's long, but back when he supported conservative causes, when he was a sort of thought as a incredibly sort of pro-defense Democrat, he was a largely mouthpiece for the Defense Department in Congress, and he, of course, at least for the military's point of view, and still is. But now you guys choose to, which is what you just did, which is sort of laugh at John Murtha.
Well, you know, I mean, do you know how many generals there are in the United States? I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds, and, you know, he talks to the same 5 or 6. Now, I'm not saying that those 5 or 6 opinions aren't worth something, but they are 5 or 6 of hundreds and hundreds.
Right, and another 5 or 6 that came out of the Pentagon recently came out with their heads on fire going, please, somebody fire Rumsfeld. I mean, not one has retired, as far as I know, recently, I should say within the last couple of months, who's come out and said, yeah, Rumsfeld's doing a great job.
Well, I mean, the military in general usually does not like to speak out on political issues, and that's only just from my personal experience because I'm from a military family.
Right.
But you know, I think a lot of the unhappiness with Iraq has to do with a lot of people think, well, we have superior firepower. How come we haven't won this war? Why is this place not leveled yet? I think that the unhappiness with Iraq really has to do with force, and that Americans are unhappy with the amount of force that they're showing.
But I mean, Lisa, you come from a military family. First of all, you say 2 things. There, one, that military. We're talking to Lisa DePasquale from the American Conservative Union, and you know that the military people generally don't speak publicly about politics. That's why it's so shocking that everyone who has criticized Don Rumsfeld. That's in fact why it's so incredibly significant, and the fact that we have more firepower. I mean. This just in, the United States in Vietnam, the Soviets in Afghanistan, the Americans in Iraq. I mean, we're not learning a new lesson here. That's yeah, we could technically win every battle and be there forever.
But we're fighting by different rules. I mean, we're, you know, trying
so
to
Lisa,
cherry-pick who we're going to
I hear you.
You know, fight against, rather than say, you know what, there's going to be.
I hear you. What do you want to do? You want to kill them all? Now, and I'm being asking a little question here because we do have superior firepower. The way we can win is we can either nuke them, or we don't even have to nuke them. We can just drop so many conventional weapons on cities that they'll say, okay, we give up. Kind of like we did with Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Would the American Conservative Union like to do that?
You know, I don't know what the American Conservative Union wants to do, but I do know that it is bothersome when we are fighting by different rules than the enemy.
Are we supposed to be better
they're
than
the
them?
ones that put their families in dangerous places because they hide amongst the families, meaning insurgents and
we invaded them, Lisa. We invaded them, Lisa. They didn't say, hey, we're going to hide our family in Baghdad and wait for the Americans to invade us. We invaded them, and they didn't attack us on 9/11. So when you talk about superior firepower, I agree with you. And I'm a guy who is totally in favor of the Persian Gulf War. And when somebody comes to get you, you got to come to get them back, okay? And so we should have taken the superior firepower and gone to where they were, which is Afghanistan. And they said we let them
in Afghanistan. I mean, we're not, you know, the military
with not enough firepower. That's the irony of it. They're not enough firepower. But Lisa, I want to get to something that is actually goes to the point of conservatives rather than Republicans. Because I know the American Conservative Union, actually, a number of your editorial writers at the magazine you guys have, I believe, came out and endorsed John Kerry. So there is significant disgruntlement.
No.
Isn't that didn't that happen? Or maybe it was an American.
We don't have a
that was at the American. That was at the American Conservative.
Oh,
which is
my
a
bad.
magazine.
American Conservative. It's a magazine. Okay, now, but I know that there is significant discomfort with Bush and this Republican Congress at the American Conservative Union. But I want to get to an issue that's actually about conservatives.
Okay.
Hurricane Katrina. Now, to a lot of people, that showed that the conservative model might not necessarily work. Hey, laissez-faire, take your hands off, don't do anything, because there comes a time when you need your government to do something, and Hurricane Katrina was one of those times.
Well, I think that's what you just said is the exact opposite of, and it showed that conservatives are right because they were waiting for something to come down from the federal government, and most of the problems were at the federal level. We don't think it should be at the federal level. We think it should be at the local level.
So if there's a national tragedy like that, hey, let's hold back and hope the locals do an okay job.
No. Just all the red tape that it takes to get money from the federal level.
There wasn't any
by the way, we don't.
when Democrats were in charge.
By the way, we'd like to. I mean, who wouldn't? Great, let's loosen the red tape and get that federal money to the states that need it when there's a crisis like that as quickly as possible. About that, who would disagree with you?
But when Clinton
I mean, you have to have something at the federal level. I mean, look at the difference between Mississippi and Louisiana. I mean, Mississippi had their local government, they had it together. The state government, they had it together. And, the difference between what happened in Mississippi and what happened in Louisiana
Yeah, I know what happened. Oh. Yeah, in Louisiana, there was a city where the levees didn't hold.
Yeah,
that's what happened in Louisiana.
There were still problems in Mississippi, and it really bothers me that people don't acknowledge what happened in Mississippi just because they're the ones that got their act together.
Lisa, that is a gross misrepresentation of the facts.
There's people that lost their houses in Mississippi.
Of course there are people. There are people that lost their houses in Florida in the hurricane season prior to that. That's unquestionably true.
The reason people talk about Louisiana more is because there was so much more devastation there, not because the local bureaucracy didn't work, but because the levees didn't hold. They swamped the whole city. Thousands of people died. What happened in Mississippi?
Thousands of people did not die in Louisiana.
Yes, they did.
More than
1,000 people died. Oh, I guess that's a laughing matter.
That's different than thousands.
You're right, it's not thousands, it's just over 1,000.
Okay, my bad. It was only over 1,000. Lisa's right. It was only over 1,000 people in New Orleans that died.
I don't even believe that over 1,000
1,000
people died. Just because someone died after Hurricane Katrina doesn't mean the hurricane killed them.
That's a good argument.
Now, how do you talk to a person
now, Lisa, you've written in
Just because they didn't know how to swim was not the hurricane's fault.
And it wasn't the
Finally,
Bush's
some
fault.
common sense.
Thank you.
Right. I know.
Do you actually believe that, Lisa?
What, just because they couldn't swim?
Yeah.
No, I believe that there were a lot of older people that lived in that area,
Right.
and they were evacuated, and it's hard to say whether or not they would have died either way. I don't think that means that their death is any less significant. I'm just saying that I don't necessarily believe that 1,000 people...
hospitals, and the hospitals shut down. They had to be taken off IVs and oxygen tanks. I mean,
I don't
you
have
can't
the
really
number.
blame nature for that. I mean, it's their fault for not being able to stay alive themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there seems to be a great consensus among people who, counted bodies that there was anywhere. I believe there was something just under 1,000 to just over 1,000 that died as a direct result of Hurricane Katrina, and many who think that is an underrepresented count. I don't think anybody thinks it's less, except, well, turns out you.
But Lisa,
I've never heard. I mean, honestly, regardless of what sign I'm on, I really have not honestly heard more than 1,000. I've never heard that number.
I absolutely have, but I just gotta, for your own sake, warn you that that's not the best argument. I wouldn't go with that argument. All right, Lisa.
Let me
last question for you, because we've got to wrap up. Lisa DePasquale is from the American Conservative Union. We appreciate you joining us.
You write that if the Republicans lose control of the House and Senate, it's not a mandate for Democrats, but rather an expression of voters' frustration with Republicans who have turned their back on conservative ideals. There are two things I like about that. Well, one I think I like about it, and then I have a question. What I like about it is that you guys seem to have already come up with an explanation for why you're going to lose. So I like it that you're...
Well, why not? We are going to lose. Why Republicans are going to lose.
Sure, okay.
That's an important distinction.
Sure,
She's right
okay,
about that.
Right, why Republicans are going to lose. But I like that there's already sort of, that's the conventional wisdom that is set in. I want to know why it's a mandate when Republicans win the Senate, for example, 51, or George Bush wins the presidency, 51-48. And why is a Republican victory never an expression of voter frustration with Democrats' refusal to, say, stand up to Republican bullying and deliberate deceit? But a Democratic victory is obviously a repudiation of Republicans and not a belief in democratic ideals.
Well, I've never said that Bush had, a mandate, but I think in this particular case, it has to be because the things that Americans want to see, like enforcement first immigration, is not happening on the Republican side or on the Democrat side. So when Americans are leaning one way and neither party is doing it, and one party wins, I think that means they don't have a mandate.